So the first patch is out, and it's expectedly underwhelming. Although the devs aren't entirely to blame for the state of the game, whether you believe it's the publishers or the shareholders or whatever, to me, it doesn't matter. I'm still a consumer of a product they deemed was good enough to ship out. So to me, there's no excuse but to expect better. What I'm going to be talking about today is the music of Payday 3, because to me, it's very important. It's my strong suit. It's what I understand best. And I have some suggestions that could make the game a lot better, which it desperately needs right now. I have Payday to thank for one of my most viewed videos, which is a remix of the Diamond Heist. To me, it's the pinnacle of what Payday's music can achieve, along with many, many other tracks like Gunmetal Grey, Stone Cold, Razormine, etc. The incredible music makes me want to revisit Payday over and over and over again. And it's been that way for at least for several years at this point. This video is going to be unscripted, so please bear with me. I do have a few bullet points I wanted to go over that I've written down here. To preface, music is rarely something you can just fix because, well, music is subjective. It can be hard to pinpoint logically what could be wrong with the music, especially because Payday 3's music isn't bad by any means. Most people will find the music satisfactory or even great, and that's okay. Everyone has different tastes. Why I don't think it's good, or rather, it's not that it's not good. It's lackluster in my opinion. The reason why I think it's lackluster is a conversation of expectations. It starts with its predecessors. Payday 1 and 2 already established a really strong foundation for how the music should be played. By the way, I'm talking specifically about the assault phase. I think the stealth portions of Payday 3 are completely fine. What the old music has that the new ones don't, just sort of as a general rule of thumb, is a musical technique called syncopation. Like I said, it could be more nuanced than this, but I have to generalize because music can be really difficult to logically dissect, like I said. But for the uninitiated, we'll keep it simple. Traditional Western songs in common time have a rhythmic flow that can be divided into two parts generally, the beat and the offbeat. Whenever you tap your foot to the beat of any song, the offbeat is whenever your foot is in the air. So when you emphasize the offbeat in music, this is called syncopation. The reason this is so important is because it often gives a song a bouncy characteristic that makes it rhythmically more fun and interesting. In electronic music, these are audio processing techniques and they're known as ducking and sidechaining. But even in a traditional musical sense, Payday 3's music lacks variation in rhythm, and that makes it boring. This is especially apparent if you compare its flow to the music in Paydays 1 and 2. It feels very sedentary and rhythmically stays in one place throughout the entire piece, with a few minor exceptions here and there. So the idea here is that I have a problem with how the music feels rather than how it sounds, and this wouldn't really be an issue if we didn't have something to compare it to. energy is important for a game like Payday. I mean, what would someone expect going to a club or a rave or watching a movie and they come across a high-octane action scene? What would someone expect during an assault phase or a heisting video game? It's probably energy. It's what makes the first two games so incredibly memorable and fun to play. Syncopation, by definition, is the interruption of the music's flow, which is really appropriate given the sort of gameplay loop you'd expect from Payday. The police assault is sort of an interruption of your heisting flow. If I was in charge of making the music for a game like Payday, this is where my mind would go first. How do I express blood-pumping adrenaline through music? And while I think the game nails its instrumentation, progression, and melodies, it lacks a lot in flow and tension through its rhythm, especially the back end of the soundstage. If you could imagine the music being played in a stage, the accompaniment of the main melody is usually what's lacking here. Payday 3's music sounds like Payday, but it doesn't feel like Payday. This is an important philosophy. If you want to create a great game, better music makes the game more fun to play. Some people might call this a bias towards Simon Viklund because he's the one that did it first, but Carl Noren made a song called Death Row. Like Castlevania made music for Payday 2 and Alesso's Payday music. They all serve as proof that syncopation is an empirical thing, that it's not just a bias. Syncopation and such techniques are what makes EDM artists and pop songs, hip hop, rap, whatever. They use these to accentuate the energy and give their music more oomph on the back end. And I'm not trying to rag on Gustavo here. I think he has great melodies and has great potential. I'm more so bothered by how this game's overall vision is mismanaged or maybe misunderstood, not Gustavo as an artist specifically. I have my own interpretation of what I expect from Payday 3's music to be able to achieve that level of energy that you'd expect from a Payday game. You might notice it's basically the same. Like I said, I like Gustavo and his compositions already. Firstly, I made the percussion a lot more prominent. The kick is stronger, the hi-hats are more prominent, and I gave the snare a little bit more energy. There are a couple more effects that I added here and there in order to bring up the intensity. Here are all the bells and whistles that I added without the original track. The important thing to focus on here is that it's the little things that enhances the listening experience. You can definitely hear what I mean after this comparison. At least that was my goal when doing this interpretation. Although I do personally think No Rest for the Wicked isn't the best example because it's one of the better assault tracks in the game, I still think my point comes across well just based on principle. Many people might disagree with my interpretation, and if you do, I'd love to hear why in the comments. But I, much like anyone else who likes Payday, just wants this game to succeed and have a healthy player base. This is just one aspect in which I think could elevate the experience a lot outside of gameplay. I mean, many years down the line, people are going to be talking about Payday as a franchise, revisiting the music to relive the initial experience. People talk about the music of Payday the Heist and Payday 2 all the time. But for Payday 3, at its current trajectory, it's not the music people are going to be talking about. They're going to be talking about how the game failed to maintain its player base with questionable design choices, a lackluster progression, server and gameplay issues. You know, the music sits comfortably amongst that messy pile of crap it's been imposed upon. And it's a real shame that it fails to stand out, because something as simple as this could really help mitigate some of the glaring issues. I know there are some doubters out there, but you'd be surprised how much music can help a shitty game feel a bit better to play. I hope they prove me wrong and turn things around over time, but I'm not going to hold my breath. Although Payday's tracks usually improve in minor ways when they get an official release, what worries me is that the flow, the essence, and improving upon the emotional value of the game through a strong musical presence wasn't brought to full attention by design. It's like the principle of make this game feel fun to play wasn't the intention during the process of developing the game. Whether you agree or disagree, the sound designer and the music composer has just as much say or just as much importance to how fun the game ends up being as the artists and the programmers are. And this might be a bit melodramatic, but it could be an issue of having the right mindset as much as it is having technique and skill. That's not an easy thing to fix, because you don't compose a song without a goal in mind. Like many visual or game design choices, musical ones are also made with an intention. The intention behind Payday 3's music, to my ears, feels like they were so focused on how it sounds rather than how it feels. And the latter is far more important when leaving an impression on the player. It's a matter of principle. The fact that Payday 3's music fails to deliver on that end makes me realize that their focus is not on making this game as fun as possible, but to just loosely copy what was done before without understanding what made the previous games so fun in the first place. And even if it was the focus, it fails to improve upon its predecessors. Whether you agree with that sentiment or not, the numbers show that this game has failed to achieve its goal of being a true successor to Payday 2. Yes, Payday 2 has had significantly more time to cook, and it didn't start off very well either. But that's not an excuse, because the knowledge they gained from developing the first two games should have been there already. It doesn't feel like a successor. The lackluster music just kind of accentuates that point. Now, in fairness to the developers, they did have to create a brand new game using a new engine no one has probably had a lot of experience using before, so there was probably bound to be some technical hiccups here and there. But the complaints that I have relate to design choices, which I'd argue is less about technicality and more about emotional value. Fixing the gameplay and design aspects would certainly help, but without fun music, nothing they do can fill the hollow experience at an emotional level. There are games that deliver on that end, and they live on continuously through its player base, a healthy player base. Unfortunately for Payday, the way things are going, it may live on in infamy instead. This video turned into a bit of a ramble, but I was passionately driven to talk about this because I really do care about this franchise. It's one of those guilty pleasures for me where all of the little things add up to create this intense, brainless fun of just shooting cops and stealing money. I just love how the first two games encompasses this power and intensity, and these tones are facilitated by excellent music. The soundtrack for the third game is growing on me a little, but to me it leaves something to be desired. If they can't make any more bangers, I hope they at least bring back the jukebox system so that I can enjoy the old tracks whilst enjoying the superior gunplay and graphics. But I guess we'll see. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.